You ever look in the mirror and feel like you're not enough? Like no matter how much effort you put in, how you do your hair, your smile, the clothes you wear, you still don't see what others might see? Let me tell you something real, something raw. Beauty is not just skin deep. And sometimes the most beautiful people are the ones who have been convinced they're not. They carry their beauty in silence, in struggle, in scars. You've been lied to by this world. You've been conditioned to think beauty is a filter, a follower count, a magazine cover. But the truth is you've been walking past your own reflection, not realizing you're the blessing in the room. You are art in motion. And today we're going to talk about why. 7 signs you're good looking, even if you don't think so. Sign 1. People stare, but they don't always speak. There's a strange feeling you get when you catch someone looking at you. It's not always flattering. Sometimes it feels awkward, like you've got something on your face, or maybe your shirt's wrinkled. You wonder why they looked in the first place. But deep down, if you're being honest, you've noticed it more than once. The glances, the double takes, the quick shifts when you look back. They don't say anything, they don't compliment you, but their eyes speak volumes. And what they're saying, without a single word, is that you've got something about you. Something that turns heads, something that pulls people's attention in ways they don't even understand themselves. The problem is, when you don't see yourself clearly, you assume their silence is discomfort. But what if it's admiration wrapped in insecurity? What if they're looking at you because they're stunned, not because they're judging? The truth is, most people don't know how to express what they feel in the moment, especially when what they feel is admiration mixed with intimidation. You might not think of yourself as someone who turns heads, but your presence does something to people. It might be your energy, your poise, the way you walk into a room without needing to be noticed, yet somehow still are. People stare because there's something arresting about you, something they don't see every day. And sometimes they don't speak because words feel insufficient. They fear saying the wrong thing, or worse, they fear rejection. So they admire you from a distance, hoping maybe you don't notice their fascination, but you do. You notice it every time someone's eyes linger a little too long before darting away. What you have to understand is that people often confuse attraction with confidence. They think if someone's attracted, they must know it. They assume that a beautiful person carries themselves with full awareness of how they impact the room, but that's not always true. In fact, the most striking people are often the most unaware. They see the world through humble eyes. They don't walk with a mirror. They don't lead with vanity. And that's what makes them even more magnetic, because you're not trying to impress. You're just being. And people notice that. They stare, because your authenticity is loud even when you're silent. They feel something around you they can't define, an elegance, a strength, a softness. And they don't always know how to respond to that. Sometimes the stare comes with curiosity. They're trying to figure you out. There's a calm mystery to you that makes them want to know more. You don't give away everything at once. You're not overly animated or desperate for attention. You're still. You're grounded. And that's rare. In a world where people shout for validation, you move like you already have yours. But it always leaves an impression. And they don't even realize how long they've been watching you until you look back. And when you do, they panic a little. Because they were caught admiring someone they don't feel qualified to talk to. They don't speak because your presence exposes their insecurities. Then there are those moments when you catch someone's eyes across the room and there's a flicker of something there, attraction, interest, maybe even admiration. But then they pretend like it never happened. They look away. They act disinterested. They avoid interaction. It makes you question yourself. You wonder, was that real? Did I imagine it? You didn't. What you witnessed was a moment of vulnerability on their part. You caught them seeing something beautiful in you. And when people aren't ready to acknowledge beauty in others, especially when they feel lacking in themselves, they retreat. They hide their feelings behind awkwardness. Their silence isn't rejection, it's reverence. They don't know how to show. You've probably been in situations where someone seemed quiet around you, almost shy. Maybe you took it personally, thought they didn't like you, or that you weren't interesting. But sometimes People go quiet not because they don't want to engage, but because they're overwhelmed. Your presence might be louder than your words. It might challenge their perception of beauty, of energy, of confidence, and they don't always know how to handle that. Their stare is a surrender to the fact that you're affecting them more than they expected. And their silence is a shield they hide behind when they don't feel worthy to speak. There's a power in being watched, even if it makes you uncomfortable. Not because you want the attention, but because it reveals something. You are seen. You may not believe you're attractive. You may have spent years internalizing the opposite, but people can't help but notice you. And not just because of how you look, but because of the way you carry what you've lived through. There's a story in your eyes, a grace in your movements, a strength in your stillness. That's what they're staring at, not just the outside, but the whole picture. The way you've survived, the way you shine without even trying to. And it's not just romantic attention either. Sometimes the stare comes from people who feel inspired, moved, or even challenged by your presence. You remind them of something they lost, or something they're still searching for. You walk with a kind of dignity that forces people to reflect. You don't even have to speak. And still, your presence communicates something powerful. That's not vanity. That you carry value in the way you simply exist, and others can't help but recognize it, even if they never say it out loud. Even if they stare and walk away, they felt something. They saw something. And yes, it can be confusing. It can leave you doubting your worth even more, especially when you crave affirmation and get only glances. But don't be so quick to dismiss those silent moments. Don't assume they mean nothing. People are complex. Attraction is layered. And most people have no idea how to express genuine admiration when they see it. They've been trained to either worship beauty or downplay it. But when they meet someone like you, someone beautiful in a quiet, unexpected way, they get caught off guard. Their reaction doesn't always make sense, but it speaks loudly, even when they say nothing. You might think you're invisible, that no one notices you, that your presence goes unacknowledged. But in reality, you're the kind of person people remember in fragments. The smile that lingered, the glance that stunned, the calm that comforted. People stare because they've been disarmed by your presence. They didn't expect to be moved. They didn't expect to feel something. And when they do, they don't always know how to handle it, so they go silent. But their silence is full. It holds the weight of what they saw, what they felt, and what they couldn't say. They may never come up to you and compliment you. They may never slide into your DMs or call you beautiful, but you've had an impact. You've stirred something. And that matters more than empty words. The world is loud with surface-level compliments, but when someone goes quiet in your presence, that's different. That's deeper. That's real. It's not just about what they saw, it's about what they felt. And whether or not you believe it, that feeling was triggered by you, your presence, your energy, your unspoken glow. Sign 2, strangers treat you differently without a reason. There's something you've probably noticed, but maybe you brushed it off. Maybe you thought it was coincidence, or maybe you convinced yourself it wasn't that deep, but it keeps happening. You walk into a store and the cashier's attitude softens. You pass a stranger on the street and they smile before you even look up. People hold doors longer, speak a little sweeter, offer help without being asked. You haven't said a word. You don't ask for attention. You're not putting on a show, but somehow you're being received with a certain softness, a certain admiration. And the craziest part? You don't understand why. You think you're just ordinary, you think you're just existing, but strangers don't treat everyone this way. There's something about you that shifts the atmosphere, something that makes people respond to you like they've seen something rare. Even if they can't explain what it is, sometimes you chalk it up to luck. You assume the barista was just having a good day. You convince yourself that the Uber driver's extra kindness wasn't personal. But when it happens over and over, when people soften around you without knowing you, when they remember you after a single conversation, you have to ask yourself what's really going on. This isn't about arrogance. This is about recognition. Even if you don't see it, there's a light you carry, and people respond to light. They don't know your story. They don't know your insecurities, but they feel something when they're near you, a quiet beauty, an invisible glow, a presence that feels good to be around. And without realizing it, they treat you differently because something in you feels different. You may not believe you're good looking. You may have spent years convincing yourself otherwise. Maybe your reflection doesn't match society's blueprint of beauty. Maybe you've been told you're average, plain, even unattractive. But your lived experiences can't cancel out the quiet truth strangers see. Because beauty isn't always loud. It isn't always obvious. It doesn't need filters or angles or trends. Real beauty speaks without needing to announce itself. It draws people in with ease. It lingers in rooms long after you've left. And strangers treat you differently, not because they pity you, not because they're being polite, but because, to them, you're something beautiful. And beauty demands reverence, even when it's subtle. There are moments that will stick with you when someone goes out of their way for you, when a stranger compliments you in a passing moment, when someone chooses you over others with no explanation. And still, you might shrug it off. You might tell yourself they were just being kind, but too many of those moments strung together start to look like a pattern. And patterns are rarely accidental. When people repeatedly go the extra mile for you without knowing you, that's not just kindness. That's recognition. They see something special, something graceful, something worth honoring. And the thing is, you didn't ask for it. You weren't trying to get noticed. That's how you know it's real. People don't shift for no reason. They respond to what's felt, not always what's spoken. It can be subtle, the way someone listens more intently when you speak, the way a stranger's eyes light up when you laugh, the way someone holds a gaze longer than usual. And while it may not always be romantic, it's revealing. People instinctively lean into what feels beautiful to them. They might not understand it, and they may never tell you directly, but their behavior changes. They soften. They give more grace. They remember you. You stand out, even when you don't try to. And that's not something you can fake. That's presence. That's natural beauty. And the world, chaotic as it is, still stops for beauty. Even if only for a moment. You might feel undeserving. You might think, they don't even know me. Why would they go out of their way? But strangers aren't drawn to your resume. They're drawn to your vibe, your energy, the subtle way you make the world feel less harsh just by being in it. And while you might not see it, they do. They see it in your eyes, in the way you carry yourself, in the peace you bring without saying a word. So they treat you with more patience, more respect, more awe. Not because they're pretending, but because your presence asked for nothing and still gave everything. Sometimes people give you the benefit of the doubt when they wouldn't offer it to others. They extend compassion without cause. They listen longer. They show more grace. And you wonder why. You think maybe they're just kind-hearted people, but deep down, you feel it. That their reaction is about something more, something unspoken, something in you. You don't feel deserving. You don't feel particularly extraordinary, but they treat you like you are. And that's the part that confuses you. Because the world doesn't always affirm you. But these strangers, these brief moments with people who owe you nothing, reveal something you've been too humble or too hurt to accept. You are seen as beautiful, not just in looks, but in essence. Even children notice. They stare at you with innocent fascination. They smile easily around you. Animals seem calm in your presence. These are signs you can't manufacture. Because energy doesn't lie. Beauty, the kind that comes from within and radiates outward, doesn't need an introduction. It introduces itself. And when you carry that kind of energy, people react to it, even if they don't understand it. The strangers might not know your name, but they feel something when you enter a room. They treat you as if you matter, as if your presence is worthy of attention, because in their eyes, you are. You may try to minimize it. You may tell yourself it's nothing, that people are just being polite, but politeness fades quickly. What stays consistent, what's hard to ignore, is repeated kindness. from people who don't know your history. That's not chance. That's the result of a presence that draws people in. You are being treated with quiet reverence because strangers feel something in you. Maybe it's your warmth. Maybe it's your aura. Maybe it's the beauty you haven't fully come to terms with, but they see it. And even if you don't, their actions keep trying to tell you. Sometimes the treatment is so subtle you almost miss it. A smile held a little longer, a compliment you didn't expect, a small act of service with no strings attached. You walk away thinking, why were they so nice to me? But kindness without a clear reason is often the world's way of responding to beauty, not just physical beauty, but the kind that radiates peace, strength, and authenticity. Strangers feel it, and in their own way they honor it through gentleness, patience, and generosity. Even if they never say a word, their behavior speaks for them. And what it's saying is, you're more captivating than you realize. If it's been happening for years, if you've quietly noticed that people you've never met treat you with more care than you expect, it's time to stop brushing it off. That's not arrogance. That's awareness. It doesn't mean you walk around with inflated pride. It means you finally understand what others have seen all along. You're not invisible. You're not average. You're not forgettable. You're the kind of person strangers remember, even if they only saw you for a few minutes. You carry something that sticks, and no matter how you try to downplay it, the way the world responds to you is proof that beauty, real beauty, doesn't need permission to be felt. Sign 3. You're always underestimated until you're not. They don't see it at first. You walk into a room and there's a pause, but not the kind you expect. Not the off-filled kind. It's the kind loaded with assumptions. They glance and they label. They guess your intelligence, your strength, your worth, all based on something shallow. Maybe it's your quiet nature. Maybe you don't dress like everyone else. Maybe you don't carry yourself like someone who demands attention, so they count you out. They assume you don't have much to say, that you're not competition, that you're just there. It happens so often you almost get used to it. You hear the subtle sighs, the patronizing tone, the quick glances people share when you speak up, and you think, they don't see me. But you also know what's coming, because it always does. The moment you open your mouth, everything shifts. The moment you show what you're made of, their posture changes. Their expressions betray them. Suddenly, the person they underestimated becomes the one they're trying to figure out. You've seen it before. The hesitation in their voices. The questions they ask now with a little more respect. The way they lean in to hear what they ignored just moments ago. And it's not because you changed. You've been this way the whole time. But their perception changed. Their assumptions cracked. They thought they had you figured out. And now they're scrambling to adjust, to revise the narrative they tried to write for you. That's the thing about being good looking in a way people don't immediately recognize. It confuses their stereotypes. You don't fit the mold. You don't lead with ego. You don't walk around announcing your worth. So they mistake your silence for weakness. They mistake your humility for a lack of ability. They mistake your subtle power for passiveness. And then you show them, without raising your voice, without showing off, who you really are. The beauty you carry becomes undeniable, not just physical, but spiritual, intellectual, emotional. You're the storm they didn't see coming. You're the presence they can't ignore anymore. It hurts sometimes being underestimated. It feels like rejection dressed in politeness. You notice how they choose others over you at first, how they dismiss your input, how they smile at you like you're harmless. But you've learned not to chase recognition. You let them think what they want. Because deep down, you know the truth always rises. You've seen it happen too many times. The same people who dismissed you become the ones quoting you. The ones who doubted you become the ones defending you. And it's not because you did anything extraordinary. It's because you did what you always do. You showed up fully, even when they didn't expect you to. And when the shift happens, it's undeniable. Suddenly, they want your opinion. Suddenly, they treat you like you've always mattered. And though you don't need their validation, you notice the irony. You notice how fast people change when they realize they got it wrong. And deep inside, it stings. because you wonder why they couldn't see it before, why they needed proof, why your presence wasn't enough, until you had to prove yourself. But that's the reality of being underestimated. You walk through life as a silent force, and when you finally unleash that force, the world scrambles to catch up. You don't look like what they expect power to look like. You don't move with arrogance. You don't speak to dominate. So they label you with words like shy, quiet, nice. They overlook the fire in your eyes, the depth in your voice, the strength in your silence. But when the pressure hits, when it's time to perform, that's when they see. That's when you flip the script. That's when you remind them that beauty doesn't scream, it just is. And power doesn't always need the roar. Sometimes it whispers and still commands the room. There's a beauty in being the underdog. There's a strange kind of power in being the one no one expects to rise, because when you do, it shakes things up. It challenges people's shallow judgments. It disrupts their categories. And suddenly, they're looking at you with wide eyes, wondering how they missed it. But you didn't miss it. You knew all along. You knew who you were when they didn't. And you didn't need to shout it to the world, because real beauty, real strength, doesn't come from proving everyone wrong. It comes from knowing you were never wrong about yourself. Even as a child, you noticed it. Teachers overlooked you until your test scores came back. Coaches ignored you until they saw your skill. People would be surprised when you showed depth, as if it wasn't expected of you. And it wasn't just about intellect, it was about how you carried yourself. You were calm, observant. You didn't compete for the spotlight, so they assumed you didn't belong in it. Until you stepped into it naturally, without force. And that's when they'd say things like, I had no idea you were like this. As if you were hiding. But you weren't hiding. They just weren't looking. There's a quiet kind of good looks that doesn't rely on flamboyance. It's not loud or flashy. It's graceful. It's dignified. It catches people off guard because it doesn't conform. You're not playing by the rules of the world that says you must shout your value. You're not decorating yourself in false confidence to gain approval. You just show up, whole, steady, real. And the world underestimates that, but only for a moment. Because once you speak, once you show who you are, there's no going back. They can't unsee it. They can't deny the glow that was there all along. And still, it's lonely sometimes. Being underestimated over and over wears on the heart, makes you question yourself. Even when you know your worth, you get tired of being the surprise, tired of being the one people finally realize is amazing. Because you don't want to be a revelation. You just want to be seen, not discovered, not uncovered, just seen from the beginning. But the world doesn't always give that freely, so you've learned to let your presence speak for itself. And it always does, louder than any introduction, more powerfully than any title. There's a kind of freedom in not being what people expect. Because when they count you out, they give you the power of surprise. They give you the advantage of invisibility. And when you finally show up in full force, it's unforgettable. You make an impact. You leave a mark. And not because you shouted the loudest, but because your presence was undeniable. That's the beauty of being underestimated. You don't rise to meet expectations, you rise beyond them. And every time it happens, you remind people that what's valuable isn't always loud, and what's beautiful doesn't always need permission to be seen. Sign 4, people assume you're taken even if you're not. People don't always say it outright, but their actions speak louder than their words. You're standing there minding your own business and you can feel the energy around you shift. Someone looks at you, holds eye contact a second too long, but then quickly glances away, like they've convinced themselves not to even try. It happens at restaurants, at the gym, walking down the street. There's this unspoken assumption, this invisible label they've placed on you, already taken. They look at you and think, someone like that has to be with someone. It doesn't matter that your phone doesn't buzz with messages, or that your nights are spent alone. They don't know the silence you return home to. All they see is what's on the outside, and it convinces them that someone already saw your value before they ever had a chance. It sounds like a compliment, doesn't it? Being assumed as unavailable, but over time it can feel isolating, because while people admire you from a distance, they rarely approach. They second guess themselves before speaking to you. They talk to your friends instead. Or worse, they flirt around you, never directly with you. You can feel the walls being built around you, walls you didn't ask for. You wonder why no one pursues you, why you're the one always smiling from the sidelines while others find connections. And then it hits you. People aren't ignoring you because you're not attractive. They're holding back because they've already written your story in their minds. A story where you're not available. A story where someone has already claimed you. There's a kind of loneliness in being admired but not approached. You become this untouchable figure in people's eyes. Beautiful but distant. Desired but out of reach. And the irony is, you might be more open than ever. You might be craving genuine connection, hoping someone would see past the surface and take a chance. But they don't. Because they've convinced themselves you're taken, or worse, that someone like you wouldn't be interested in someone like them. So they walk away before they ever step forward. And you're left wondering if it's something you did, if your energy's off, if you're sending mixed signals. But it's not you. It's the way people perceive you, beautiful, composed, whole, and they mistake it for being fulfilled. People will look at you and imagine a life you don't even live. They'll see your confidence and assume it came from being loved. They'll see your calmness and assume someone's out there protecting your peace. They'll see your glow and think it's the result of someone pouring into you. But they don't realize you gave that to yourself. That beauty, that light, that strength, you built it in your quiet moments. You carved it from pain, from self-doubt, from years of wondering if you were enough. You weren't shaped by love. You were shaped by the lack of it. And still, you shine. Still, you show up as someone whole. And that wholeness, it confuses people because they're used to seeing beauty that begs for attention. You never had to beg. You became the kind of person people admire but feel unworthy of. There's something about presence, true, grounded presence, that makes people nervous. You don't have to dress provocatively. You don't have to speak loudly. You just walk in, and you carry an energy that makes people think twice. They feel something when you're near, and they don't know what to do with it. Some get intimidated, some get curious. But most just stay silent, hoping someone else will take the risk. They're too afraid, and you watch it happen. The stares, the hesitations, the missed moments. And it leaves you wondering, if they see something in you, why don't they say something? Why do they let the moment pass? It's because they assume you're already chosen. And that assumption becomes your invisible cage. You move through life trying to be approachable, open, receptive. But none of that matters when people have already decided you're unavailable. You might even notice how people ask indirect questions. So, are you here alone? Your partner must be lucky. They want to know without asking. They want to admire without risking rejection. And in their silence, you feel overlooked. Not because you're not enough, but because they've already convinced themselves they're not. And it doesn't end with strangers. Sometimes even people close to you assume you're fine without companionship. They don't ask if your heart is full. They assume it is. They see your photos, your laughter, your strength, and they imagine someone is holding you up. But what they don't realize is you've learned to hold yourself up. You've mastered the art of appearing fulfilled while your soul still aches for connection. And that dissonance between how people see you and how you feel can be heavy. Because you want to be seen fully, not just admired from afar. You want someone to ask, not assume, to risk, not retreat. But it doesn't happen often. There's beauty in being the kind of person people assume is already loved. But there's also pain in it. Because you know the truth. You know the nights you wished someone would choose you without hesitation. You know the longing that lives behind your smile. You know the effort it takes to keep showing up in a world that only sees the surface. And yet, you keep going. You keep shining. Because you're not doing it for attention. You're doing it for yourself. You've become whole not because the world gave you love, but because you decided you deserved it. Sometimes, someone brave enough breaks through. They ignore the assumptions. They approach anyway. They ask questions instead of jumping to conclusions. And when they do, you light up. Not because they validated you, but because they saw you. Really saw you. And that moment feels like air after holding your breath for too long. It reminds you that real connection is still possible. But it takes courage. On both ends. Because being beautiful in a way that intimidates isn't always about looks. It's about presence. It's about the way you carry yourself, the way you exist without needing anyone's approval. And that energy can scare people who aren't ready. So here you are, walking through life, being misjudged as already taken, already loved, already fulfilled, and maybe in a way that's true. You've learned to love yourself, you've filled your own cup. But that doesn't mean you don't want to share it with someone. That doesn't mean your heart isn't open. The world might assume your story is written, but only you know the chapters you're still waiting to live. And that's where your power lies, in knowing that while others assume you're taken, you're still choosing, still waiting, still believing someone will look past the assumptions and see the human behind the glow. Sign 5. Children and animals are drawn to you. There's something unspoken about the way children and animals respond to people. They don't care about how expensive your clothes are or how perfect your smile looks. They're not impressed by your titles or your status. They're drawn to energy, raw, authentic, unfiltered energy. And if you've ever noticed how a child looks at you just a little longer than usual, or how a stranger's dog breaks away from its leash to sit by your feet, it's not just a coincidence. It's not random. They're picking up on something. They're sensing the light in you, the gentleness behind your eyes, the calm in your spirit. You might not always see what they see, but they feel it. And their instincts are rarely wrong. It's in those quiet moments at the park when a child you've never met suddenly runs toward you, giggling, arms wide open. Or when a baby locks eyes with you from across the room and just stares, mesmerized, as if your presence calms them. You feel caught off guard, unsure of why it keeps happening, but something inside you recognizes the purity of that moment. No judgment, no agenda, just a soul connecting to another soul. It's not about beauty in the traditional sense. It's deeper. It's the beauty of being safe, being real, being light in a world that's often heavy. And animals, they don't lie. They don't pretend to like you. If a dog presses its body against your leg or a cat curls up in your lap without hesitation, it means they trust you. They feel secure with you. They feel seen by you. Even wild animals sometimes pause around certain people. Birds come closer. Squirrels linger. There's a gentleness to your aura that even creatures of instinct respect. It's not about what you look like. It's about how you make the world around you feel. Some people bring tension with them. Others bring ease. And when you bring ease, the most sensitive among us, children and animals, will always notice first. You might brush it off, thinking it's not a big deal, but think again. In a world where people often wear masks, the ones who have no interest in pretending are the ones we should pay the most attention to. Children haven't learned how to fake connection. Animals don't care about politeness. They respond to truth. And if they gravitate toward you, that says something about the truth you carry. It says you have a kind of beauty that's rooted in spirit, not appearance. A beauty that whispers, you're safe here. That kind of beauty doesn't age, doesn't fade, and doesn't need to be advertised. Some people walk into a room and everyone notices their style, their body, their status. But then there are people like you. People who may not always realize the quiet ripple they cause. You might not be loud. You might not try to steal the spotlight. But your spirit speaks volumes, and the purest beings pick up on it. A child tugging at your coat, a kitten climbing into your lap, a dog resting its head on your feet like it's known you forever. These are not small signs. These are profound reflections of something deeply lovable, deeply trustworthy, and deeply real inside of you. Think back to those moments when the little ones chose your presence over the chaos around them. When the shy child at the family gathering came and sat beside you, or the baby who wouldn't stop giggling when you smiled. You didn't have to do anything extraordinary. You didn't perform. You just showed up as you. And that was enough. Because your presence brings peace. Your voice carries warmth. Your energy feels like home. That's a kind of attractiveness that can't be manufactured. You can't buy it. You can't fake it. You can only carry it. And you do whether you realize it or not. Even in your quietest moments, you're noticed by those who matter. It might not always be the kind of attention you expect. It's not always about being approached or admired with words. Sometimes it's about being chosen without explanation. A baby crying in someone else's arms, then falling silent in yours. A pet that follows you room to room, even when you're not offering treats. These are sacred things. They're reminders that what you carry inside of you has power. Soothing, magnetic, healing power. And sometimes, the world will overlook it because it doesn't flash or shout. But the innocent ones never miss it. They say children are closer to the spiritual realm than adults are. They haven't yet unlearned their instincts. They still remember what pure energy feels like. So when a child runs to you without knowing your name, understand something in your soul is familiar to them. Something about you feels like safety, like light, like joy. And when animals choose you, it's not about logic. It's not about reason. It's because they trust the calmness in your presence. They feel the love in your silence. That kind of attraction runs deeper than anything physical. You might not think of yourself as someone who stands out. You may even question your beauty because the world didn't always affirm it. But stop and look again. Not in the mirror, but in the reflection of those who are too young or too pure to lie. Look at the child who lights up when they see you. The animal who curls up beside you. They're telling you something the world forgot to say. That you matter, that you radiate something good, that you're beautiful in a way that doesn't have to try, that you're the kind of person the purest beings feel drawn to. And that says more than any compliment ever could. There are people who make others feel like they're walking on eggshells. Then there are people who make others feel like they can finally exhale. You are the latter. You are the pause in the storm, the quiet in the chaos. And children and animals feel that in you before anyone else does. They don't need explanations. They don't need proof. They just know. And if they know, maybe it's time you start believing it too. Not because they say it in words, but because they choose you again and again without hesitation. Sign 6. People compliment the little things, your eyes, your laugh, your aura. Sometimes it's not the grand gestures or sweeping compliments that reveal how striking you really are. It's the small, almost whispered observations. It's when someone tells you there's just something about your eyes, and they don't even know why. They pause mid-sentence, almost caught off guard by a detail you've lived with your whole life. You might not see anything special when you look in the mirror, but others catch it in a glance. The depth, the warmth, the way your eyes light up when you talk about something you love. People notice those things. Not everyone will say it, but when someone does, believe them, because they're not admiring something you put on. They're recognizing something that comes from deep within you. Maybe someone once told you they liked your laugh. Not because it's perfect, but because it's real. Because it bubbles up like sunlight cracking through clouds. It's the kind of laugh that makes others want to laugh too, even if they don't know why. It doesn't matter if it's loud or soft or quirky. What matters is how it makes people feel. And if people are noticing it, complimenting it, remembering it, it means your joy has an echo. That's beauty. In one of its truest forms. Not in how you appear, but in the way your spirit touches others without even trying. There are people whose presence demands attention, and then there are people whose presence changes the room quietly. You might be the latter. The kind of person someone walks away from and says, I don't know what it is, but they just have this glow. That glow? That's your aura. That's what shows up before you speak and lingers after you leave. And when someone compliments your aura, they're not just speaking about your looks. They're speaking about your presence, your essence, the energy you carry that can't be taught, bought, or copied. That kind of compliment doesn't come out of politeness. It comes from someone who's been moved in a way they can't explain. You've probably had people mention things about you that you never even thought about. The way your voice calms them down. The way your presence feels safe. The way your smile makes them feel seen. These aren't shallow observations. They're signs that something about you is affecting others on a level that goes deeper than surface beauty. You may have brushed those compliments off, thinking they were just being nice. But people don't compliment your laugh or your vibe or your energy unless it genuinely strikes something in them. You're leaving an imprint without even realizing it. Sometimes the most sincere compliments are the ones that come when you're not even trying. When you're in sweats, hair a mess, no filter, no performance. And someone looks at you and says, you look good today. It catches you off guard. You weren't expecting it, but that's when it means the most, because it means what they're seeing isn't just style or polish. It's you, the raw, unfiltered you. That means you're not beautiful because of something extra. You're beautiful despite not needing anything extra at all. There's freedom in that. Power too. It's easy to miss how rare that kind of beauty is, because it's not always loud. It's not always praised publicly. But when someone pulls you aside to say they love the way your eyes look when you're focused, or how your laugh makes them feel at ease, they're telling you that your beauty isn't tied to perfection. It's tied to authenticity. And authentic beauty always lasts longer. It stays. It's the thing people remember long after the conversation is over. The thing they think about when they're having a hard day. That subtle, healing, unforgettable part of you that touches something deeper than the surface. Think about how often people repeat those compliments. Not just once, but again and again. Over time, that consistency is not a coincidence. It's recognition. It's confirmation. When multiple people in different seasons of your life keep highlighting the same things about you, your laugh, your eyes, your warmth, that's not small talk. That's a reflection of something undeniably beautiful in you. And the most surprising part, it's usually the things you overlook. The things you never imagined were noteworthy. But others see them, and they're moved by them again and again. You might think those compliments are just nice words, but pay attention to how people say them. When their tone softens, when they pause, when they smile to themselves before finishing the sentence. That's when you know it's real. That's when you know they're not just being polite, they're being honest. Because when something about you resonates with someone on a soul level, it makes them speak differently. Their body language changes. Their eyes soften. Their voice becomes more personal. That's what it looks like when someone is speaking from the heart. That's what it feels like to be seen, not for what you're trying to be, but for who you already are. Sometimes we're the last to see our own beauty because we've grown so used to carrying it. We live in it every day, so we forget how rare it is. But other people, they notice. They pause. They compliment. And those compliments are like little mirrors, reminding you of the things you've stopped appreciating about yourself. Your voice, your laugh, the way you make people feel without even realizing it. You think it's just your personality, but to someone else, it's a light in their day. A softness they didn't know they needed. That's the kind of beauty that can't be hidden. And the truth is, people don't compliment your essence unless they feel something shift when they're around you. That shift, that energy is everything. It's what makes someone feel safe, inspired, welcomed, calmed. That's not about makeup or fashion or flawless features. That's about soul, spirit, light. And when people respond to that in you, it's because your beauty isn't just what they see, it's what they feel, and feelings linger. Feelings transform, feelings awaken parts of others they didn't know were asleep. You're doing that just by being you. So the next time someone compliments something you never thought twice about, pause and receive it. Don't deflect. Don't minimize it. Receive it like it's a truth being handed to you. Because that compliment may have taken courage to say. It may have come from someone who doesn't give praise easily, but they felt compelled to say it. That matters. That means you reached them without even trying. That means your beauty isn't dependent on effort. It's embedded in your being. And not everyone can say that. Not everyone radiates will performance, but you do. That's rare. Sign 7. You don't see it because you're not obsessed with yourself. Sometimes the most beautiful people are the last to realize it because they don't spend every moment staring at themselves. They're not caught up in their own reflection, not constantly seeking validation, not fishing for compliments. They move through life focused on things deeper than appearances. They show up for others, they listen, they care, they serve. And while they're busy doing that, they don't realize how striking they truly are. It's not because they lack beauty, it's because they're not consumed by it. In a world obsessed with self-image, their humility becomes a quiet kind of radiance, something rare and powerful, something you can't look away from, even if they're not trying to be seen. When you're not obsessed with yourself, you're often more focused on purpose. You walk into rooms with intention, not to be admired, but to contribute. You laugh easily, you connect deeply, and you're fully present. Because your energy isn't being drained by the constant need to perform. Ironically, that's what makes people drawn to you. That freedom from self-obsession becomes magnetic. People feel safe around you, seen by you, understood by you, and they can't quite put their finger on why they're so captivated. But it's your selflessness, wrapped in quiet confidence, that becomes unforgettable. That's beauty without ego. That's presence without performance. You see, when someone is truly beautiful, they don't need to advertise it. They don't need to remind you of it. It simply reveals itself. You walk into a room and people glance at you, not because you demanded their attention, but because something about you commanded it naturally. And while you might be too focused on your work, your goals, or helping someone else to even notice the attention, others do. They see it, they feel it, and they wonder how someone so attractive could be so unaware. But that unawareness is part of what makes you even more attractive. You don't carry yourself like someone who needs to be seen. You carry yourself like someone who already knows who they are. There's something undeniably powerful about someone who doesn't seek the spotlight yet somehow ends up in it. And not because they chased it, but because their light was too bright to ignore. You might think you're just regular. You might feel average, invisible even, because you're not constantly documenting your every angle or seeking approval. But people see what you don't. They notice the way your eyes soften when you speak, the way your posture carries grace without arrogance, the way you light up when you talk about something you care about. You're not performing, you're just being. And in a world of constant performance, that authenticity stands out more than you know. The people who don't think they're beautiful often are the ones who've built their value on something deeper. They've had to develop strength, kindness, resilience. They've been through things that humbled them, shaped them, grew them. They didn't get by on looks. They had to cultivate soul. And somewhere along the way, they stopped needing to obsess over the mirror. They started looking outward, toward purpose, connection, healing. That shift, that inward gaze turned outward, that's what makes them glow differently. That's what makes you glow. Because your beauty isn't just on your skin. It's laced in every word you speak, every act of kindness you give, every time you choose empathy over ego. When you're not obsessed with how you look, you stop living for applause and start living for alignment. You start becoming more attuned to the quiet things that truly matter, how your presence impacts a room, how your words shape someone's day, how your energy can lift someone who's been carrying too much. That shift, away from self-obsession and towards self-awareness, changes everything. It makes you radiant in a way no filter can replicate. It gives you a confidence that doesn't scream but whispers in certainty. And even if you don't see it, others do. They don't just notice you, they remember you. Because something about you feels honest, whole, and refreshing. You've probably had people in your life try to convince you of your beauty, and you brushed it off. Maybe you laughed, maybe you rolled your eyes, maybe you told them to stop exaggerating. But what if they were telling the truth? What if the only reason you don't believe it is because you never built your worth around it? That's not a weakness. That's rare strength. It means your beauty never had to be loud to exist. It means it's not fragile, it's rooted. And rooted beauty doesn't waver when it's not validated. It stands strong, quietly, steadily, impacting people without ever needing to announce itself. People like you are often underestimated in this way. Because you're not constantly seeking attention, others assume you don't want it, or that you don't deserve it. But your impact speaks louder than your words ever could. You don't need a runway to be noticed. You don't need a stage to be admired. Your walk down a hallway, your smile across a coffee table, your calm presence during chaos. That's where your light shines. And though you may not see it, you leave impressions everywhere you go. You leave people feeling better than they did before. That's beauty. Unforced, unfiltered, unshakable. There's a quiet kind of beauty in being content without compliments. In not needing eyes on you to feel like you matter. In not basing your confidence on how many people liked your last picture. That kind of self-assuredness can't be faked. It comes from doing the work, from healing, from knowing who you are outside of other people's opinions. And that kind of wholeness is so rare in today's world that it stops people in their tracks. They don't understand how someone can be that grounded, that sure, that radiant, without trying to be. But that's you. You're not chasing attention, yet you draw it. You're not performing beauty, you're living it. If no one ever told you, let this be the moment you consider a new truth. You're beautiful, not just in appearance, but in essence. And the fact that you don't obsess over it, that makes it even more real. It's not curated. It's not calculated. It's not cosmetic. It's character. It's how you show up, even when no one's watching. It's how you treat people who can do nothing for you. It's the way your kindness leaves fingerprints on moments in memory. You don't need to constantly look in the mirror to know your worth. You carry it like a quiet anthem that plays wherever you go. That's the paradox of real beauty. It's often invisible to the one who holds it. Because the world has convinced us that beauty looks like perfection, polish, symmetry. But the people who are truly captivating are the ones who aren't chasing those standards. They're walking their own path. They're built different. And you might not realize it yet, but every time someone pauses a little longer when they look at you, every time someone remembers you more than they should, every time someone tells you there's just something about you, that's the world trying to show you what you haven't yet seen in yourself. Would you like this entire series compiled together into a full-length speech or formatted for a specific presentation? And maybe the reason you've never truly seen how beautiful you are is because the world needed you to feel before you ever tried to impress. Maybe God hid your reflection just long enough for you to build a soul that shines louder than any surface ever could. Maybe the reason you've been so overlooked by yourself is because you were never meant to see what others already know. You carry a beauty that heals, that calms, that lifts the atmosphere without saying a word. And if no one has told you lately, you don't need to change a single thing to be seen. You already are. You already have been. By God. By the right people. And now, finally, maybe, by you too. God bless you. Thank you for being here. Stay tuned, because I've got more truth, more heart, more soul-shifting content coming your way. Keep walking in your light. Keep listening with your heart. And never forget, you are more than enough.